So I'm having a chat with art school girlfriend. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks so much. So the big news is that you have a new album out next week called Soft Landing. Tell us a little bit about it.
So, this is my second record, and it was kind of written and produced in reaction to my last record. So, my last one was a very self indulgent breakup album that was written over quite a long time and produced and tweaked over a couple of years, and then it was almost finished. COVID happened. So, by the time it came out, I was a little bit disconnected from it, and I wanted this album to feel quite like immediate. And so I gave myself a window of a few months and booked in the mixing and everything ready to give myself a deadline. And it's all about joy, basically, and the kind of what I always call the second coming of age that happens in your late 20s, where you kind of figure out what life is about and
Yeah.
what makes you happy, and how it's not necessarily something about that's in the distance or in the future. And actually, it's kind of probably a bit more closer to home than you thought.
Yeah, good. And as you mentioned, this is your second record. When it comes to the sound of the record, how does this one compare to your debut?
Yeah, that was also kind of done in reaction. My first debut was about like infinite space, and everything was kind of like perfectly placed, and it was really lush and like high quality, and everything sounded, quite beautiful. Whereas this, I wanted it to sound like an electronic album played by a band in a room. So I was kind of tapping into a lot of the music that I grew up listening to that really made me feel something. And that was, well, when I was really young, that was like skate music. So like Offspring and Nirvana and Linkin Park.
Mm.
But then as I got older, like Pixies and Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. So this music had like a lot of energy to it. But I'd kind of ended up making quite chill music just from, being a bedroom producer tends to facilitate that a little bit more easy. So immediately I wanted all the kind of BPMs to go up and for it to be quite rhythmical and have a lot of energy in it and also be quite dance influenced. So yeah, the production definitely was part of that. So we did like a lot of analog outboard gear and making stuff sound quite like gritty and kind of not perfect basically.
And was it the plan to do that when you stepped into the studio to record this, or is it simply how it turned out when you were in there?
No, this was like a manifesto that I'd written up and sent to Riley McIntyre, who I was co-producing with. And we really had to kind of force ourselves to come away from making stuff sound really good and lush because, obviously that's what we like to hear.
Mm.
And so, yeah, we'd kind of get to certain points where I'd play something on a synth and we'd maybe, want to nudge it in time and it's like, no, leave it. Or we'd kind of hit a really nice sounding reverb and I'd be like, no, let's like run it through a guitar amp and use the reverb on that, like stuff like that, which was a kind of a real forced hand of wanting to do that.
Mm. So when you look to the future to start working on the next record, are you going to continue in the same fashion as this one, or are you going to make another twist and another change?
I think I've really found my stride working in this way. It's a lot quicker and immediate, and it's all about kind of capturing your gut instinct at the time and then trusting that and kind of leaving it rather than like continuously editing or whatever. And I set up a my own music studio in January with some friends, and I've basically kind of kitted it out and set it up with that in mind. So everything's already plugged in, and I've got loads of like little analog outboard stuff and like guitar pedals all set up
Mm.
to run vocals through and things like that. So I'm definitely going to try and carry on in this vein for a while, I think.
Good, good. And when it comes to writing music, how do tracks normally start off for you? Is it a lyric, a melody, a riff? What works for you best?
So drums was actually my first instrument. I'm not very good at them anymore, but I still am quite inspired by like beats and rhythm and programming and drum machines in general. So a lot of the time it started off with that, or it's like a sound. I always call them like these little moments of song starters where you, I don't know, hit a synth sound or a chord on the guitar or something that just makes something like turn on in your brain and you go, oh, this is something, I think.
Mm.
So the production and the writing tends to be done at the same time, and then it tends to be melody and lyrics a little bit later on once I've kind of set the world and the aesthetic in which to write within.
And when it comes to the lyrics side of things, how easy do you find it to put the lyrics to the melody and the beats that you've put together already?
So when I'm performing a melody, I'll tend to do the thing which is technically known in the industry as gobbledygook singing, where as you're writing the melody, certain words start falling out. And that's really handy from a technical perspective because phonetically these words are going to sound quite good where you're putting them, but also it is like a version of like stream of consciousness, like therapy. Like certain things will just fall out on these words and phrases, and you go, oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize I was feeling that. Or, oh, this is a really nice word fitting here. What rhymes with that? So you tend to get like this pattern of words emerging, and then I kind of sit down with, you know, my pencil and paper and tend to be like, right, I'm going to turn this into actually like, you know, fully formed lyrics now.
Yeah, good. And your fans will want to see you on the road, and you've got a couple of festivals over the summer, and then you've got a tour in November. I bet you can't wait to be on the road again.
Yeah, playing in bands is kind of how I grew up, so that's like in my bones as something that I really enjoy. And also it allows me to kind of figure out how to elevate the music into a live perspective. So it is, I'd like to have it like kind of as a thing on its own. So the tracks, you know, are predominantly electronic with a lot of live elements, whereas when we play it live, it's like live drums, live guitar, live bass, and we try and recreate as much as we can in kind of like a higher, more live way for sure.
Yeah, good. And are you hoping to take it overseas as well, into Europe and maybe over to the States and beyond?
Yeah, we're looking at Europe for February next year, which I'm really excited about. Sadly, like America is just so expensive to get to that maybe I could do like a couple of smaller shows, maybe solo or something. I was lucky enough to do a support tour back in 2019, solo as well. So I kind of definitely want to go back. I've had my taster of it, and I really love touring in America. So I would love to at some point, fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. And look into the future as well. Is there things that you haven't achieved yet that you really do want to achieve as an artist?
I mean, just to like, it sounds so basic, but I think in artists these days, it's just the necessity to be able to carry on going, and I think it's just become like we have the wage gap in every other industry in, you know, the UK, but we also have it in music, and a lot of people end up falling off once, you know, life gets a bit more serious because, you know, it then becomes a bit of a folly to want to carry on doing music. So as long as I can do it for as long as I can in, you know, a pretty good way, I'm happy for that. But I'm definitely looking next year to maybe produce some more for other artists, which I've done a bit of this year, and a bit of engineering for other artists this year, and I've really enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, great to hear. Well, Polly, it's been great having a chat with you.
Thank you so much for having me.